Alright, so got the guitar, all the sides, all the edges of the top and the back trimmed up so that they are flush with the sides. And now I have gotten my binding out, and as you see I'm going to be using this. I've got some Siso rosewood with a black line, it's a fiber paper, and then some padauk to get a good contrast here. And that's going to go against my granadillo here. So just for reference purposes, so you can see, this is my granadillo, and that'll be my binding. So you can see there'll be a good contrast. It'll go like this on the edge, as it were, so that you're going to have that contrast on both sides. I think that'll look real nice. So I'm setting up here to cut channels for the binding, and what I do is I take my my circle cutter, and I have a little attachment here that just fits in with a couple of pins, but it fits a little loose, so I tape it on there so I don't have to keep trying to hold it in place. It's adjustable with the screw here, in and out, and I've got a little cutter on the end. So got that, I have a sharpener, and I have a piece of scrap. Now I went ahead and measured my binding, so my binding at the tallest point, so or at the from the bottom of the binding where it will sit on the guitar side to the top where you'll actually see it from the back or the top. The narrowest section is right about 11 millimeters, which means that I need to cut my binding channels 10 millimeters deep or less into the sides. So they're not deep, but the depth of the binding here. So it's only going to be 2 millimeters deep, but the width of the binding is 11 millimeters at the narrowest, so I need to cut it 10 millimeters or a little bit shallower. So I'm going to set my gauge here at 9 millimeters, and then I will adjust this once I have sharpened my cutter and turned it the correct direction, so that I take a spot down to 9 millimeters. So my cutter, now it just fits in here like this, and you have different designs, right? So I have a wedge, and I have a holder, and then I have what used to be a blade off of a jigsaw, and I have flattened the back and then sharpened a bevel both directions into the top so that I can go either direction, not just one way. The blade does have a little bit of a bend in it, that not any reason in particular. It does help it sort of stay in the channel. So inside here I've got my wedge, and then I have a block piece, and then the blade fits on this side. I also have on this side, I have a little line that shows me exactly where that blade interacts, and I'm able to tighten that down in there. So first part here, excuse me, is to make sure that your blade is good and sharp. So you get on your stone and you take that flat side, make sure that flat side's good and flat. And then the beveled edge, Okay, so we should have a good sharp point there. Now, what I will do, move that slightly. I'm going to be cutting so that my beveled edge is towards where the binding will go, so that I leave a good sharp side where that will be, so that it's going to come this way, which means that my beveled edge goes out from the cutter, from the reference point, because I'll be referencing the back or the top to do these side pieces. Now, because my binding is not that deep, I can check the depth of cut with the binding itself. I'm just going to go just a smidge. Alright, and then I'm going to hammer this in and get it ready. Alright, that should be good. Now I have to set the depth that I'm going to, or the width of the binding here. So, and you'll find out the reason for the scrap here in a second, is because this is kind of fun to do on camera, I'll tell you what. I've got to tighten my screw down. I have a block with a straight edge here. And I'm going to kind of come a little bit to the left here so you see the edge of the bench. I'm going to double check that I'm cutting the width that I want. So again, this side will be towards the guitar and this side will be towards the binding. So it'll come in right on that line, and that gives me a little bit more leeway than I really need. And I'll have some excess to remove, but I think that'll look fine. Probably come a little bit farther. Maybe I'm a little closer than my 9mm. Anyway, that's how you do it. To get yourself set up to be able to do the binding channels. Okay, so I came out another 1/2 millimeter, double checked it. I like what I see. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate how to do this. I'm going to hold my reference piece against the body of the guitar, and I'm going to take shallow shavings. I'm just going to go back and forth all the way around. Now, because my binding is the same for the back and the top, I don't have to adjust my cutter again. Now, you may have to stop every once in a while and resharpen. If you do that, make sure that you get your cutter put back in the right direction. Again, make sure the bevel is facing towards the top or the back of the guitar, and that the flat side of your bevel is to the outside of this, away from this part, in order that the side is going to be flat when you've got it cut. And that is sticking to my guitar here. It means it's not quite. Alright. And that's basically how we do this. So we do it all the way around, both sides, top and back. go ahead and get all the way around, and I'll come back. Okay, so now that I have taken my cutter and I have cut the width, the depth of the binding onto the sides, now I need to know how thick the binding is this way for sure. And I know it's about 2 millimeters, but I'm going to take my calipers and I'm going to get a reading on my binding. Now that measurement needs to be transferred to this, because now I need to mark the back and the top with the depth of the binding on those two surfaces. So, and I want this to be very close, just a hair, slight tiny bit less, like half a millimeter or less shy, 0.2 millimeter shy, something like that. Okay, so that I have my cutter in. Now I'm going to take my other straight edge here and I'm just going to double check that my binding will fit that. I'm going to take my binding and I'm going to kind of set it so that I know I can see my line and my binding and make sure. And I have just a hair shy of the binding. And that's fine, because what that means is that I can then remove the excess easily with a little bit of work with the scraper. So I like that.